Hey everybody, if this is your first time here, I'm Steve, and this is my travel channel, and I take lots of nostalgic trips to the past. And this morning I'm here in Hollywood, California, in front of the Sowden House, which is on the corner, almost on the corner of Normandy and Franklin. And I think you can see behind me there, the beautiful and famous Lloyd Wright designed Sowden House. It was built in the 1920s by famous architect Lloyd Wright. He was the son of Frank Lloyd Wright. And it was later purchased in the 1940s by Dr. George Hodel. And in 2019, it became one of the primary filming locations for the TNT limited series called I Am the Night, about Hodel's possible involvement in the famous and unsolved murder of Elizabeth Short, also known as the Black Dahlia. Thanks for joining me on another trip down memory lane. To get to the Sowden Hodel house, I just got off the Hollywood freeway here at Normandy Avenue, and I'm heading straight up the street to the very end to Franklin Avenue. If you look straight ahead, you can see the Griffith Park Observatory at the end of Normandy Avenue. The house is just one block past Hollywood Boulevard, and just down below the observatory, and just a few houses west of Normandy Avenue on Franklin Avenue. It's just a couple of miles east of downtown Hollywood in a neighborhood called Los Feliz. So how many of you have been watching the TNT limited series called I Am the Night? Any fans? If you've been watching it, then you'll recognize the front of this home here. And if you haven't seen the series, I highly recommend it. I wanted to stop by and show you the Sowden House. Now, in the 1940s, this was purchased by Dr. George Hodel, and that's who this series is about. It's about Fauna Hodel, who was George Hodel's granddaughter. Now, she just died, I believe, in 2016, and she was cremated up in Seattle, Washington. George Hodel, when he died, he was also cremated, and his ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean, so he also doesn't have a final resting place. I'm trying to get out of the sun here, but I also want to show you the house. It's very bright this morning. George Hodel was a well-known doctor here in the Hollywood area. He had quite a number of famous clients. It was very influential here in the 1940s in Los Angeles. Now, for those of you who remember Elizabeth Short, also known as the Black Dahlia, George Hodel was the prime suspect in her murder. The murder was never solved, it was never proven, and he never served any time. But ironically, his son, Steve Hodel, grew up and went into and became a police investigator, and has spent much of his adult life investigating his father's story. And he believes that his father was a serial killer. Not only does he believe that he murdered Elizabeth Short, but he also believes that he murdered many other women as well. So the TNT series, I Am the Night, is set in and around Hollywood here and Pasadena, and some of the movie locations and filming locations are some of the best landmarks here in Los Angeles. So since I was going to be in Hollywood today, I thought I would stop by and show you as many of the locations as I could find. So I'm starting here in Hollywood, and depending on if I can find the other locations, how long it takes me, how much time I have today, I'll include the others as well. I had visited the Hollyhock House and the Ennis House, which are also very famous landmarks here in Hollywood, but for some reason I didn't know about this particular house. So I'm going to head on to the next locations, and we'll see how many I can find. Okay, so I made it to my second I Am the Night filming location, and look at that cool vintage truck right in front of the cool vintage Chili John's. Now, Chili John's here in Burbank, on Burbank Boulevard and Keystone. It opened in 1946, and the original location was Green Bay, Wisconsin, 1913, if I remember right. So this is one of the oldest restaurants here in Los Angeles. If you saw the TV show, it took place at night, late at night, and Chris Pine and, gosh, I forget the actress's name, who plays Fauna Hodel. They met here, or they went in and had a cup of coffee and cherry pie. So I'm gonna go in and have, I think I'm gonna have a chili cheese dog. and show you the interior. It's funny, on the show, it looks like there's nobody around. It looks like it's out in an industrial area. Nothing around and no one around, but this is a very busy, Burbank Boulevard is a major street, and this is a very nice part of town. Looks totally different than it did in the TV series. There's a funeral home, Valley Funeral Home, right across the street. I guess that's appropriate. Now, I saw another YouTuber come here a couple of years ago, and he had a chili cheese dog, and that looked really good. So that's what I'm going to try today. I've tried chili cheese dogs in a lot of places, and actually, one of the best is Wienerschnitzel. That was probably my first chili cheese dog back when I was a kid. So let's see how this one measures up to the very simple Der Wienerschnitzel. As I mentioned, this scene in the movie takes place late at night, and what really stood out to me was all of the really beautiful neon that they had here at the front of the restaurant. Other than that change, it looks just the same as it does now during the day. Hello.
How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Doing okay.
The interior looks exactly like it did during the scene that was filmed here, except it was at night. And it really does feel like I've stepped back in time, back to 1946. I'm guessing it didn't look too much different than it does today, way back then. Okay, so I lucked out. There weren't a lot of people when I got here, so I'm sitting here in the seat where Chris Pine sat, and the actress who played Fauna Hodel sat right here. This is where they had their coffee and cherry pie, if you remember that scene. There's the mural that was painted on the back, on the wall. I have to say that watching the waiter prepare the chili dog, I wasn't expecting this to be such a huge portion and to be a full meal. So the waitress that was here during the show, was she an actress or was she someone who worked here?
No, she's an actress.
Yeah? Oh, okay. I guess I was just thinking maybe it would be somebody who worked here. This is definitely a first for me, having to eat a chili cheese dog with a knife and a fork. I tend to be a very slow eater, so I'll fast forward so I don't put you to sleep. I can honestly say that I've never tasted anything like this before. It's not at all like the chili cheese dogs I've had in the past, and I certainly can't compare it with Der Wienerschnitzel chili cheese dogs. It was $9 with tax, not including the tip, so that's a little bit on the expensive side for me, but it was a full meal. I'd be curious to know if any of you watching have eaten at Chili John's and what you thought. I thought it was good, and definitely the most unique chili cheese dog I've ever eaten. Now I'm going to head about 15 minutes east to the city of San Marino, which is just right next door to Pasadena, to the Huntington Library and Botanical Gardens, and the third filming location for I Am the Night. You may remember that I visited the Huntington last summer. I think I spent an hour or two in the Huntington's home, which is now the main art gallery and the home of the famous Blue Boy painting. And I remember taking photos and videos of the interior and the exterior, but for some reason, all of that footage has been lost. And as luck would have it, that was the one location at the Huntington where quite a number of scenes were filmed. So hopefully I'll make it back in the near future to vlog that location. There were also a couple of other locations that I wasn't able to find or get to today, but if there's enough interest in this vlog, I'll do a part 2 and see if I can find the other locations. So let me know if you're interested in seeing them in the future. I started off this video by visiting the Sowden House in Hollywood, which is nearly 100 years old and considered very historic by California standards. But when you consider the Dudley Castle was built in 1070, there's really no comparison when you consider which one is truly an historic home. The Dudley Castle is located in Dudley, England, and is said to be the inspiration for the castle in the movie Frankenstein that was directed by English director James Whale, at least I hope that's how you pronounce his last name, who directed the classic Frankenstein movie in 1931 and went on to direct The Invisible Man in 1933 and Bride of Frankenstein in 1935. Whale was living and working here in Hollywood at the same time that Hodel lived in the Sowden House, And since Hodel had many Hollywood friends and clients, it wouldn't be surprising to learn that Well and Hodel may have even crossed paths back in the day. Here's a picture of the school that James Well attended, and also a memorial plaque to the director. Sadly, James Well committed suicide at the age of 67 by drowning himself in the swimming pool of his Pacific Palisades home, which is not far from Hollywood. He was cremated, and his remains are interred at the Columbarium of Memory at the Great Mausoleum that is no longer open to the public at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, which is about 10 minutes or so east of the Sowden House. These photos were sent to me by Lenton or Lent Nugent, and this just seemed to be the perfect time to share them with all of you. And here's a selfie of Lent standing next to the very large headstone of Duncan Edwards. Edwards was a famous Dudley-born footballer or soccer player who played for Manchester United in England and who sadly died from injuries following the Munich air disaster of 1958. 7 of his fellow Manchester United team players were also killed in the crash. Edwards was only 21 years old at the time of his death, and it's been 60 years since the crash, but fans still remember him and still visit his memorial statue in the town center and still leave flowers on his grave today. So I want to give a big shout out and thank you to Lent for sharing these photos and the memories of these 2 men who touched our lives in 2 very different ways. And I'd like to send out another big thank you to my latest Patreons, James Herring, Stuart Chastain, and Joy King. Thanks so much, and your postcards will be in the mail this week. If you'd like to receive a postcard that I pick up from one of my trips, click the link down below and become a Patreon of this channel. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you'll be notified when I upload future videos like this one. So until next time, thanks for sharing the memories.